All right, if everybody could take your seats, please. We're gonna get started. Or not. Or stand if you prefer. So yeah. Hi. Welcome. We're very excited to have you all here at the inaugural Meetup for Women in Agile London. So first of all, what we're going to do is we're the three organisers here, so we're going to introduce ourselves, tell you a little bit about what Women in Agile is. We have a little bit about a code of conduct for the organisation, and then we'll introduce our amazing speaker tonight. So we took this picture on one of the nights that we were organising, putting this community together. So we wanted to start off by telling you why we wanted to do this, why we've been putting in our spare time to organise this. So for me, last year I had a life-changing moment. So I attended a women's leadership program called 10 Women Strong, and it's really changed my life in a positive way, I should say. But I'll tell you, before I did that program, I avoided anything with the word woman in it, something that was specifically for women. I avoided it because I felt patronized by it. I thought, I don't need special help because I'm a woman. No. And I avoided them. But having gone through that program and heard all the stories of all these different amazing women and learned from them, caused me to look back on my own life and see patterns and behaviors in myself. And I describe it as like I woke up. I kind of was like glass shattering moment, like seeing things in a new light and going, oh, I didn't see this before. And there is an imbalance. There's an imbalance in tech. There's an imbalance in business in general. And some concerted effort is needed sometimes to readdress an imbalance when it's there. So I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in that kind of thing. All I know is that I'm very passionate and driven to work with women and allies to readdress that and to have fun also and to build each other up. So one thing I also learned from that program is that strength and real leadership comes from vulnerability. And for me, what that means is being unapologetically you. And that's really, really hard. So that's part of what I wanted to do. I wanted to tell you my story tonight, be vulnerable and authentic with you, and then see how we can help build each other up and change things going forward. So I'm going to pass you over now to Alex.
So for me, it's very similar. So when we think about diversity, we're just underrepresented in Agile, in tech, generally in business, and especially in leadership. I find when women come together, there's a real strength in it. And, you get that strength from sharing your expertise, sharing your experience, and women's experience is really specific, I think, in how we share it. From having ideas together and the energy that we generate. For me personally, it's nourishing, and I find a real sort of fortitude in it as well. I find that's where my strength is coming from. Also, I think it's really, really important that we are creating spaces for folks who are allies and advocates of women and things that we currently associate with things that are kind of femme, so to speak. And that actually what we're doing is supporting them in understanding how they can get started or continue helping us to take up space.
All right, my story is a little bit more funny, so I'm going to start with a funny part of my story. This started a couple of months ago when Philly came back from New York. I missed her a lot, and we used to have this habit of going to brunches. So we decided to go for a brunch. Of course, why not? So we started chatting, and then she was like, I have a question to ask. And I was like, oh my God, let's see. I want to start a Women in Agile chapter in London because nobody did that before. How about you join me? And I was like, yes, please. And that was it. Can't imagine. It was like brunch, two ladies chatting, a question, oh yes, and that's where my story started, to be honest. Why am I doing this? I had to think about it, to be honest, and I've been working with so many inspiring people in the last few years, and I find inspiration even outside my day-to-day work. So I'm just going to give a couple of names that come to my head, like my yoga teacher. She's an amazing person. She inspires me every time I go on the mat. She has a voice. I just want that voice to be heard. It's the same with my running teacher. She's a teacher by day and she coaches runners by night. Every time I talk to her, she's like, oh my God, she's like the best person ever. So again, another voice that I think it's worth hearing. So finding all these people around me that, I don't know, have something to say, I think that's why we're here, and this is what we're trying to build. We're trying to build that environment where people can come up and share their stories. That's why I'm here today.
So this is the mission statement in many respects of Women in Agile. So Women in Agile London UK is part of a much bigger initiative. So Women in Agile was established in the US. It's gathering traction across Europe and South America. And essentially, it's bringing women together to support outstanding women in Agile through conferencing, through giving opportunity to speak, through opportunity to write blogs, whatever it is that we need, but to build a community of women and allies of women to help those outstanding women do that and to help people come through. So if you think you could be good at something, you don't have the forum to try it, this is where you come.
This is more of a reading slide for us. So we're part of Women in Agile, and there is a code of conduct that I will probably let you just read through. I think it's easier, but probably a summary of it is like Women in Agile wants to ensure a respectful, safe and inclusive environment for everyone. And I think that's what we're trying to do.
So, talking of allyship, one of the questions that came up on social media was, can men come? Yes, men, please be involved. Even if you don't gender identify as men, it doesn't matter, just everyone get involved. All the way from Hong Kong, our new friend to Women in Agile, Erich Bühler, reached out to us, and he's donated 20 copies of his book to us tonight, which some of you will be able to take away with you. But he's also given me the reason that he wanted to donate. So I'm just going to actually read this out because these are his words. He couldn't be with us tonight. Like I say, he's luckily not in Hong Kong anymore. Actually, he's probably in Singapore by now on his leading exponential change tour in Asia. But this is, in his words, this is why he wanted to give to us. I travel a lot and visit different countries and cultures. In all of them, I can see much less female Agile consultants than I would like. I really wanted to help reverse this situation. At home, my mother never had many opportunities, as well as many other excellent professional women I meet every week. I encourage everyone to take the lead to change this. I hope the knowledge in my book can help improve this situation and build a better world. Thank you so much for having a remarkable initiative. I'm deeply touched. So, how do you get yourself a copy? Yeah, please. So, during the event, if you can follow us on @WomenLondon, and if you can tweet something about the event using the hashtag WeAreLondon, so WIALDN @WomenLondon, first 20 tweets will receive a free copy of Eric's book. So some of you might have to rush off after our lovely speaker today, but if you can wait maybe 10 minutes just for us to go through it, and then we'll be able to announce who's got a copy of the book. Okay? Thanks.
Thank you so much to Eurostar for tonight. They've been so generous in giving us this space. All the amazing food at the back there is all being provided by Eurostar. Wouldn't be here today without them, so thank you very much. And then also thank you to our film and photography crew here tonight, which is Joe, Pascal, Zach and Harry. So thank you very much. You may see them around the place. We just wanted to document it and get the word out about the event.
My time to speak again. So yeah, I'm really emotional tonight, and she's one of the reasons. And why I'm saying this, most of you probably know, but most of you also don't know this. Florina has been my friend for the last 12 years. We've been through college together, and we've been friends for a very, very long time. So, following my funny story with the brunch, remember from the beginning, guess who was there as well? Florina. So guess what the second question was? Can you come and help us? And she was like, of course, just tell me when and where. So thank you very much.
I paid for the brunch, so I
So yeah, for those of you who don't know Florina, she's an international speaker and an Android developer advocate at Google. So she's the neighbor of us somehow. Eurostar Google. You can follow her on Twitter. I just put that up there. And she has something to tell us tonight. For the last few years, she's been in London. She's been doing a lot of great talks. She's mastering public speaking, and that's why she's here today. She's been trying to get me into public speaking for a long time. I haven't done it yet, but maybe after tonight. She was born in Romania. I'm just gonna give some fun facts. She lived in Berlin. She lived in London now. She lives in London now, which makes me really, really happy. And yeah, I'm gonna let her do the talk today.
Baby pictures coming up next.
Done. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Think about your usual day. How many meetings do you have? How many emails do you write? How many Slack messages do you write? So I feel like nowadays, especially in the tech industry we're in, collaboration and communication are crucial. So then in this world where we're bombarded with like tons of ideas coming to us and from us, how do we make sure that we're able to present our ideas in a concise, eloquent, and memorable way? I think, although scary, the easiest way or one way to do this is via public speaking. The thing with ideas is that, a lot of times we're focused on the actual idea. But the thing is that you can have the best idea in the world, but if you're not able to deliver that idea, if you're not able to share that idea in a way that the other person understands what you mean, it doesn't really make sense. It doesn't get you anywhere. But public speaking is a way that, forces you to think about both of these things, that allows you to experience and work on both of these skills, on making sure that that you have an idea, but also that you're working on how you're presenting that idea. And I think without actually doing things in practice, you can read books, you can listen to me talk, but without you actually doing the work, you won't be able to actually apply all of those things in your life. So what I want to do today is to give you the tools that allow you to make the first steps in public speaking. But being able to present your ideas is not the only benefit. Apart from this, public speaking allows you to learn a lot. It allows you to learn about the topic that you're presenting, because trust me, even if you're selecting a topic, you'll end up reading and researching it more, and you'll end up learning much, much more than you knew at the beginning. But then you also end up learning a lot about yourselves, because public speaking gets you out of your comfort zone a lot, or it definitely does for me, including now when it's one of the first times when I don't have slides and I'm not really sure what to do and I don't have a clicker in my hand. And I'm not really sure how the audience will react if I don't have slides to show them. So it's something else. It allows you to see how you'll react also in different situations, in positions that you've never been before. So apart from this, it also allows you to get out of your bubble. So being a speaker at, meetups or conferences, it means that you end up having access to other speakers. So I remember in my first conferences when, oh my God, I was actually able to sit for dinner with some people that I really look up to, and I was able to just talk to them about, I'm a developer, so about our developer issues. And the strange thing happened. They ended up asking me like, hey, so I have this problem. Did you end up having this as well? How did you solve this? And we saw that we actually have similar problems because we're all fighting the same things. And then I had a possible solution, or I had a solution, they had another one, but then together we could actually come up with something different. So, and even better than what we each had. So this means that if you're thinking about how to start, what topic to choose, think about the problems that you're experiencing every day. If you have that problem, chances are other people will as well. If you're, reading articles, watching talks, well, it means that, hey, there are other people that had similar problems, that if you're sharing your solutions, other people will find value in those as well. So think about the things that you're doing every day and talk about those. And more important, talk about the things that you're passionate about, because passion is contagious. What I hear a lot is actually, I have nothing to say, or I'm not an expert, or this topic has been covered before. But the thing is that we're all different. we have different levels of experience with different things. We understand things differently. Like, I remember there were so many occasions, like the last one was actually with some covariance topic in Kotlin, where I was reading and reading stuff and I really couldn't get that. And then I watched a talk, and it was that, oh, that aha moment where I got it. So this means that even if that topic was presented several times, there was that one person that actually spoke my language that helped me understand that topic. So once you got something, once you had that aha moment, why not share that with other people? And then we talked about levels, but it's also like the depth of things, how deep you want to go into a topic. I don't know, you can talk about the benefits of a retrospective, but you can also go more in depth, like what's the psychology behind retrospectives and how does that help emotionally the team. So there are so many ways to actually approach a topic. I think what's important is to find the point, to find that thing that you want to say, to find those takeaways that your audience could get from your talk. So think about talking about your work and about what you're passionate about. Okay, so you found your topic. What do you do next? So then I usually look at where can I share my topic. So you can do that at meetups. I think especially meetups like this are perfect to get started. The crowd is small and it's warm and it's full of people like you. So it's really the perfect place. And then you can also start applying to conferences. Funnily enough, my first time speaking was 3.5 years ago at a conference. I don't know why I ended up going directly to a conference, but I did it. So usually when you apply for conferences, you have to go through a call for papers or call for proposals, so CFP for short. So what they require there usually is a title and an abstract. So an abstract is usually a sort of a description of your talk. So this is something that you've also seen for this talk on the Meetup page. So how do you create that abstract? What I usually do is start putting on paper what are the things that I would want to cover for that specific topic. And then maybe clean it up a little bit and create a sort of an outline of what I would want to speak about. And then that outline ends up being the basis of my abstract. So how I see the abstract is a sort of an MVP, a minimum viable product of a talk, because it's something that you don't put a lot of time in. So I usually put something like 30 minutes in like writing down the outline and then trying to put those bullet points inside in an abstract. And then I share that outline with other people. So maybe folks that also know the area, that are able to provide me feedback on two things. Are the things that I covered, that I suggested that I want to cover, right? And on English and grammar, because not being a native speaker, I definitely need help with that. And usually after that, I clean it up a little bit. But this means that by this time, I spend maximum 1 hour. That's all. It's 1 hour of your life spent trying to create an abstract. Because then, worst case, if you don't get accepted, you just spend 1 hour and that's it. You can continue. If you do get accepted, only then you end up putting more work. But why people don't get accepted at conferences? So usually I've been at a part of a committee for one of the Android conferences there. So I ended up looking at a lot of abstracts for that specific conference. So usually when we were rejecting people, it was because it could be indeed that their abstract was wrong, or if we saw a lot of grammar errors in an abstract, it made us wonder like, right, so how will the quality of their talk gonna be? Honestly, if we see people that have more experienced, so they're already known as an expert for that specific topic, then chances are we would rather pick someone that's more known for that topic than someone that's new in the community. But in the same time, we also try to be fair. So a lot of conferences, for example, do blind review of talks, and plus they invite some special, like, they know for sure that they want to have these experts in, and these experts suggest their topic. So then if it happens that your topic overlaps one of the experts, okay. But then also it can be that there were several people submitting on the same topic, and they've decided to go with someone else's talk. So there are a lot of things that actually are not necessarily because your abstract or your idea was bad. It's just that it wasn't the right conference, maybe. So don't give up. Submit with the same abstract also somewhere else. Maybe get another pair of eyes just to make sure that, hey, was this actually an okay abstract? And then share it to other places as well. Okay, but let's say you get in. What happens then? Well, this is the time when you actually start building your talk. So in general, when you start looking at, okay, what is this thing with public speaking? You see a lot the importance of stories. People are built for stories, okay? So usually when you're talking about a story, like a usual, I don't know, a Grimm Brothers, Hansel and Gretel, Cinderella kind of story, you have three main topics. You have a character, and usually that character is someone you empathize with, you can connect with. Then you have something that builds tension, something happens there. And then the story ends in a good way, satisfactory for the reader. Well, then I kept on thinking, okay, character, tension, ending. I couldn't really understand how does that relate to what I'm speaking? How does that relate to architecting your Android app? But actually, it's more than that. It's about the mindset. So let's say that you want to talk about improving retrospectives. You ended up having a better way of running retrospectives in your team. So this means that you actually have the character. The character is your team. Then there was a point of tension, that point that made you decide to change the way you're doing retrospectives. What was that? Because chances are that kind of tension point also appeared in other teams. Maybe you ended up realizing that a lot of your team is remote and you didn't know how to handle retrospectives between people being remote and on-site. And then the satisfactory end is that hopefully you managed to create a better retrospective experience for everyone. But then there are other parts of the idea of narratives that we can apply in our talk. So if you think about a story, we usually have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that's the same thing we have for our talks as well. So for example, the part where I was telling you why you should start doing public speaking, that was my introduction. What I'm doing now is the main part, and then at one point you'll see the conclusion as well. But then also for some talks, for example, you might have a timeline. Like now I started with like, okay, so you want to do a talk, how do you apply, how do you continue, like start working on the talk and so on. For some topics, you might have steps. Think about magic numbers that we have in stories. We usually have the three brothers, the seven something, the seven dwarfs. So these are usually our numbers that people are tuned to. So if you're doing a talk on 7 tips on running better retrospectives, that's something that, okay, 7 sounds like a good number, sounds like enough for, I don't know, a 40-minute talk. So it's something that catches people in as well. But also, think about the right level of detail. So if you think about Cinderella, you do know the sisters, you do know that they had a stepmother, but you don't know the entire background story of the stepmother, right? You don't know how she ended up having all of the other daughters before and so on. So I think it's, but in the same time, you do know the story of Cinderella. You do know that her father was married before and so on. But I think it's the same with our talks. We have to decide where we need more detail and where we need less detail. So decide on what kind of detail actually end up elevating your talk and supporting, and which ones you don't need, that will just, I don't know, make the reader or the listener I don't know, drift off towards some other parts and not towards your points. So always keep in mind, like, where are you trying to get? What are the points that you're trying to make? In general, like, also what I've started to do actually lately is to write down the goals of my talk. So before I write the outline, I know that, okay, I want to make sure that at the end of the talk, the audience will be able to go home with these 3 points. So then, having those as a, I don't know, as a North Star, it means that whenever I'm working on the talk, I can think, okay, does this help with my point or not? Does this help me get to where I want, to my goal or not? So this means that I end up writing the outline. So starting from the outline that I created from the abstract, then I refine it. I end up adding more details, maybe changing the order because I see that, hey, I started talking about one topic, but then it didn't feel like it's going natural towards the next topic. Like you're starting to talk about the warm-up exercises in a retrospective, and then all of a sudden you're talking about the wrap-up. It feels like there should be something in the middle. Then something that actually my manager has been telling me a lot is show, don't tell. So slides. I know that today we don't really have that, but I think in all of my talks before, I usually have slides. Because slides are the visual support for the point that I'm trying to make. So for example, usually they also make things easier to get. Let's say that you're talking about the planning poker cards. You could start saying, yeah, so the planning poker cards have the following numbers, 1, 3. Why not just show that on screen? And then it's easier for people to see, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. They can already make the connections. So it's always about show, don't tell. A lot of times I've seen people talking about the number of slides that they had. That doesn't matter at all. I had talks with 250 slides. I had talks with 50 slides. Because what matters is what you put there on the slide. It matters what happens. I end up using a lot of animations, for example, in my slides. And for every animation, I actually have a different slide. So, okay, 250. That number doesn't say anything. That number doesn't say that that's a 20 minutes or a 40 minutes talk. So don't think about the slides or the slide number. Think about the slides, but not about the number. Think about whether what shows on screen helps with the message that you're trying to make. Similarly, for example, if you're a developer, we usually say that the code on slides doesn't need to compile, which similarly, I would say in text, it means that your sentences don't need to be full and correct. It's just about the idea that you're trying to send. So yeah. Slides will be another thing. Maybe someone else can do a talk about slides. Okay, so when you start building your talk, what else do you need to think about? You should think about your audience. So who are you speaking with? For example, tonight, I knew that we have a mixed audience. I know that some of you are Scrum Masters. I know that some of you are business analysts. I know that some of you are developers. So this meant that the examples that I'm using have to be common for everyone. We have to make sure that we're speaking a common language. So similarly, when you're submitting a talk to a meetup or a conference, try to think, who are you addressing to? What's the level of the audience? And I think the biggest problem that we get is the curse of knowledge. It feels like the stuff that we know, it's just so obvious, like everyone knows it, right? Actually, this is what made me start speaking. Like at one point, I was talking at another meetup, actually, with another Android developer, and I was telling him about the architecture that we had in the app at that time, which actually really worked great for us. And I realized that he had no idea what I'm talking about. He didn't know about the patterns that we were applying. So I thought, okay, but how come you don't know that? That's like, isn't everyone using that? And guess what? It wasn't the case. So I ended up starting talking about that because it felt like that's something that really helped us. And I wanted to make sure that other people also get the benefit of our work. And then, in general, refine what and how you're saying. So there are always different ways of expressing the same idea. So this means that you can always improve. refine, go over the outline, go over the slides, and see whether there are better ways of expressing the same thing. I have to admit that sometimes I end up working on my slides for way too much time, and I end up even rewriting the same section 3 times because it felt like I can do it better. There's an easier way. There's a better way to explain it. And I think most importantly, be yourself. In one of my last talks, I ended up using dog emojis, and I really, really love dogs. But they had a point, so I was using dog examples to explain some database relation work. So they made sense for the example that I was trying to, for the point that I was trying to make. But don't be afraid to be yourself, and be yourself also in how you're speaking and what you're speaking about. Being yourself is actually okay. So, think about the narrative when you're building your talk. Think about whether the entire flow fits or not. Try to take a step back and look at overall at your talk. Does it make sense? What should you improve? Then think about your audience and think about what they know and what they might not know. And be yourself. Okay, so now you kind of have your talk. But, and then the talk time gets closer. And say now you're maybe a week away from the talk. So, should you memorize what you're about to say or not? Should you write slide notes or not? I would say that these are things that you end up finding with time, what works and what not. So, for example, I know some folks try to memorize word by word the talk. Other people, and then they end up putting everything, the entire text, in the slide notes. Others put bullet points. Others don't put anything. I saw with time that if I have the entire text there, then it distracts me. So I end up reading, especially if I have a confidence monitor, with the slide notes in front of me, or whether on my laptop I have the notes available. I end up reading instead of actually connecting with the audience. So I saw that for me, that doesn't work. But I know other colleagues of mine that have bullet points, and some of the bullet points are quite dense, and for them it works. They end up doing a really good talk for that. So I would say maybe in the beginning, trying it out with bullet points might be a good starting point. But apart from memorizing or slide notes, I think what's really important is rehearsing. So when I started doing talks, and actually even now, that's something that I've been continuing for 3 years, not that long, is rehearsing with colleagues. So I usually actually do a rehearsal, a run, when I'm not in the final state, because the feedback that I'm getting from my colleagues is usually hey, how about adding this part as well? Or how about cutting this? Because this is not that interesting, but maybe you could go more deep in this section. So that kind of feedback, when you're already at a rough state, will help you a lot. And then I usually try to choose both people that know the topic, but also people that don't know the topic, because you never know who you're going to have in the audience. So let's say you kind of know, of course, you have Android developers or maybe middle level, but some might be more experts, some might be more new in the topic. So you want to make sure that you're able to, anyway, speak a general language, but still think about the level of your audience. And then what I definitely try to rehearse more than the entire talk is the introduction and the conclusion, because that's what people remember. So the introduction is extremely important because that's what draws people in. That's what makes people go away from Twitter or Instagram and actually pay attention to what you're about to say. And then the conclusion, because those last few minutes are actually the ones that people remember. There are studies that say that if you're doing a trip, for example, the way the trip ends will actually dictate how you will feel about that trip as a whole. So even if that trip was absolutely amazing, if in the last few hours something bad happened, you'll remember more the bad than all the positive experience before. So, and the other way around. So in general, I really try to to rehearse the intro and the conclusion. Okay, so decide whether you want to memorize or not. Decide on whether you want to have slide notes or not. But definitely rehearse. A lot of times, I think even now, I feel like rehearsing gets me to that extra 10% that makes the talk go from good to really good. Okay, you build your talk, and now is talk day. The biggest problems, or the biggest problem I hear and I have, is nerves. Everyone's nervous, and guess what? Nerves never go away. I have a colleague, he's been speaking for 9 or 10 years now, and I could see in some conferences that he's nervous. He's able to hide it, but you can still, if you know someone well enough, you can tell that they still are nervous. I think what changes with time is just that we're better at hiding it, and we just accept it, that it's there, and we deal with it easily, or easier. But the thing is that nerves have nothing to do with your talent or your ability. They just show that you're human and your nervous system is working, so nerves are okay. Then also maybe try to think why you're nervous. So try to think whether there are also other things that influence that state and not just the talk. So for example, did you eat that day? Did you have enough water? Are you tired? Maybe you just need half an hour to be by yourself before your talk. And think about yourself, take care of yourself. But then right before the talk, there are a few things that help me. So one of them is power posing. So this is the usual power or woman. So there are studies that say that these are really helpful. There are studies that say that actually these don't do anything. I try to do them sometimes, and I think they help. Actually, in one of my first talks, it was in a conference, and I was in the room for the talk before me, and I was somewhere in the last row with someone next to me, and I was trying to like subtly do a very well pose, and then the person looked at me like, "What are you doing there?" But then he understood that I'm the person speaking next, so he just let me do whatever I want. And then there's breathing. So what happens with our body is that our heart rushes. So by controlling our breathing, so for example, breathing in through 4, breathing out on 4, it forces our body to relax. It forces our breathing to slow down. And that also has a consequence on your heart rate. So breathing definitely helped me in a lot of occasions. And then what I actually started doing lately with another colleague of mine is a sort of like improv games. So the role of these is actually to take your mind off the fact that in 5 minutes you're going to go on stage. So at one conference, somewhere backstage, we started doing some game where we were counting, and then we were supposed to clap and then tap, and I don't remember exactly what it was because I can't remember anything from those minutes, but I also do remember that I couldn't think about the fact that I'm going to be on stage, and that calmed me down. That took my mind from those nerves and for like, oh my God, I'm going to be there, to think about something else. So support each other and support your friends that are speaking. So right before the talk, nerves are okay. Accept them. Transform them if you can. Transform those nerves into positive energy, into passion that you can send to your audience. Then power pose and breathing. Okay, so now we go on stage. So during the talk. Some studies show that during the communication, 3 things are important in different percentages. One has 7%, one has 38%, one has 55% importance. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Okay, so one of these percentages is what people are actually saying, what they're actually communicating. Another of these percentage is the tone of voice, and another one is body language. So we have 7, 38, and 55. Which is which?
7 is what you're actually saying.
We should have discussed this. You're not supposed to answer. Okay. What's 38%? The tone of voice or the body language?
Body language. Tone of
Hello.
voice.
Wait, who's for the body language? 38% body language. Okay. Sorry, you're lost. So 38% is actually the tone of voice, and 55% is the body language. So this is in a general communication. So I expect that some things might change when you're when it's about a talk, but still, 7% for what you're actually saying is like, really? Okay. So let's look at body language, and what does that mean? So body language says a lot. It's about looking and feeling comfortable, because that's what the audience wants to see. The audience wants to see you relaxed, but you also should appear confident. So how do you appear all of this when you're also nervous? And yeah, I would say fake it till you make it. And how do you fake it till you make it? Well, I learned from improvisation. So in improv and in theater in general, they talk about statuses. So a low and a high status. So a high status is someone, I don't know, like a boss or the Queen of England. Someone with a low status is usually maybe someone that's very shy and introverted, or yeah, maybe someone poor. So the thing is that all of these things also are shown in the way our body behaves and how our position looks like. So for example, someone with a high status will just stand more straight and maybe occupy more space, whereas someone that's less confident tends to occupy less space and be more, I don't know, looking down maybe and look less confident. But the thing is that by just doing this, okay, everyone here, just stand more straight in your chair. How does that feel? You'll see that with time, this actually ends up having an effect on you. Your body posture ends up having an effect on how you feel. So by just doing this, something that's actually quite simple, just by sitting more straight and maybe looking a bit more up than just looking down, things change for you. But they also change for the person that's watching you. Because all of a sudden, by just being a bit more straight, it feels like you're stronger, that you have more confidence. So I think that this is something that you shouldn't apply just while you do public speaking, but in general in life. When you're in situations when you want to feel like you're in control, from asking for a raise to trying to make sure that you're really getting that point that you're fighting for so long across. Just do this, staying a bit more straight and having that appearance at least of confidence. After the body language is said that the tone of voice is important. And with voice, actually, there are like a higher range of things that come in place. So one is the speech rate, so how fast you're speaking. You might have noticed that even now, I tried for the points where, for the times when I wanted to make sure I make a point, I slowed down. But for other stuff where what I was saying was more, I don't know, anecdotically, I was speeding up and speaking at a more normal rate. So slow down so people can really remember what you're trying to say. Similarly, you might hear also the tone of voice changing a little bit. It's a bit lower when you're trying to make a point, when it's that, I don't know, gravitas that, this is really important. Remember it. And then also like this is how you're emphasizing specific words. Like before I was trying to emphasize that concise, eloquent, memorable, it's like you can feel like every word having its own step. And you're not doing much, you're just adding a little bit of break and playing a little bit with your voice, and that's it. So all of these things, they're applied everywhere. They're not applied just in public speaking. Just that in public speaking, you get the venue to play around with them a little bit more, to play around with them in rehearsals. Then also during a talk, try to make eye contact, to make everyone feel like they matter, like you're talking to them like you're talking with a friend, like you've known them for 12 years. And then if you have friends in the audience, try to also look at them. Like I remember usually in my talks, I have to say I tend to look at the people that I know, but then also with time to try to look at other people. But if you don't know anyone, find the nodder. Every audience has a nodder. And yes, Bianca, that's you in this audience as well. And in any talk where I'm in the audience, I'm definitely the nodder. Actually, there was an interesting study done at one point where it was a teacher and students. And every time when the teacher was going right, the students were nodding. And every time when the teacher was going left, independent of what he was saying, they were all looking very confused and so on. So what happened? By the end of the talk, the poor teacher was somewhere in the right corner because that's where he got the confirmation. So this is what happens with us. So look for that. Look for the nodder, for that positive reinforcement. And then also, well, during the talk, towards the end of the talk, there's the Q&A part. Should you do it? Shouldn't you do it? I know that some conferences nowadays don't allow Q&A at all. Some conferences do and support it. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. I feel like in bigger conferences, I'd rather not do a Q&A at the end of the session. But for smaller events or meetups like this, yeah, bring them on. And that's because I saw that a lot of times, especially with technical talks, someone asks that question that only they care about, and is that corner case of the corner cases that, is that really relevant for everyone? So usually what I try to say is that let's talk afterwards, but also because usually it's about a communication, right? So you're asking me a question about the problem that you have with whatever I talked about, but it's usually not enough for me to understand, okay, what's actually your problem? Did you try this or that? What's the bigger story? So that's not something that you can actually do when you have 100 other people listening to you, asking that person questions. So that's why I usually prefer one-on-one interactions. I prefer these hallway discussions where I can actually have that proper communication with people. And guess what? It's also okay at the end of your talk to say, actually, I would prefer to have a proper discussion. So let's end the talk here, and then let's talk on the hallway or in the break. So don't be afraid to do that. So during the talk, think about the body language and the tone. They do matter, and they do help you drive the point that you're trying to make. So you've done the talk, you've answered the questions, and now the talk ends. And usually I have that voice in my head that says, I forgot to mention that. And that intro, actually, when I rehearsed it, I had better ways of nailing that intro, and I forgot to say a few stuff. But guess what? The audience doesn't know all of these things. These are all things that your inner voice is telling you and is putting more pressure on you. So try to decrease the volume of that inner voice. I'm not saying to shut it down completely, because maybe next time when you're doing the talk, because repeating a talk is okay, especially given how much work you're putting in, then try to see, okay, what was wrong? Why did you forget that point? What can you do to make sure that you remember it? Or if you didn't nail that explanation, what can you change to make sure that you are nailing it? So don't forget to celebrate, but then also ask for feedback. But then here, I'm saying also ask for the right feedback. Usually I hear like, okay, so what do you think about my talk? And the person says, that was great. And then part of me is like, yeah, they're just saying that. But then another part is like, did I actually ask them the right question? So maybe try to ask for feedback on more concise or more precise stuff like, okay, were you able to understand this part of the talk? Or was the conclusion okay? Was the narrative okay? So try to be more precise in feedback. Actually, what would be great to hear is a talk about giving and receiving feedback. So if anyone here has experience on that, please help me learn that more. And then, so there's a secret. And I'm going to tell you the secret for public speaking. The audience, you know, that scary audience that you're afraid is going to judge you. It's not the case. Actually, the audience wants you to succeed. The audience is there actually also rooting for you and hoping that everything will be okay. So be kind with yourself. Don't put that extra pressure on you. So I would say to be able to actually drive your point, to be able to apply all of these things in real life, to be able to really do that, to share your ideas in a concise, eloquent, and memorable way, I think you should start doing things in practice. You should start experiencing things. So, start speaking. Thank you.
So about the edge case. Webcasts, where you don't see the speaker, that 55% goes away. Do you have to just focus more on the speaking part?
I've actually never done webcasts.
What do you think?
Yeah, maybe the tone matters there as well. Also, I think being okay to speak slower, because usually for webcasts, if people want to increase the speed to 1.5, it's okay, but you want to make sure that what you're saying is still understandable for everyone. So there, you're lucky because you don't have to control the body language, but what you're saying is definitely important, because usually people watch the cast for the, I don't know, whatever that knowledge is, combined with the tone of voice. And being afraid or not being afraid to say, I don't know, that's so valid. I think we're always afraid of like, oh my God, what will they think if I say that I actually don't know? But that's normal. And I realize that people accept that quite easily. And they realize that, yeah, you can't know everything. So. And Alex, you had a question?
Yeah, maybe in your earlier days, have you ever completely dried up in the middle of presenting something where you completely blanked? And if you have, how did you recover from it? Or do you know of any good kind of tips or techniques people could try to maybe not feel so bad, I guess, if it happens? Because it can happen, right?
So I had one thing. Actually, it was in my first talk. So I started the talk, blah, blah, and then at one point someone walked in. And then I saw that they didn't have where to sit down. The room was very small, so. But then I realized that, oh my God, this entire room is full. Oh my God, there are all these people looking at me. And then what helped me was actually looking at the slides. So the advantage of having slides is that they also provide that, that extra support of remembering what you're saying. In the end, this is what I've done now with the sheets of paper, because I had my outline there. So whenever I didn't know, okay, what was the other point, the next point that I wanted to make, then I had that support. So doing that, I would say it's one way. More questions? Yes?
You have ever experienced a situation where you have the slides, but the technology failed?
Oh yeah, I had that.
How did you cope with it?
So, for example, at one point, my laptop wasn't recognized at all. So I just ended up sharing my slides with someone else from the organizers, and they presented it. Actually, the worst thing I saw happening was not to me, but to another speaker. You know, on MacBooks, when it just freezes and you just have the beach ball. Yeah, that's what happened to them during a live demo. And then they ended up restarting their laptop, and they were like, okay, I can do this. And then it happened again. The thing is that it's okay, people understand that stuff happens, life happens, and because the audience wants you to succeed, they'll be okay with that. So yeah, I try to also have maybe sometimes backups. So for example, if something happens, if I have slides and something happens, I want to be able to quickly share those slides with someone else. So like with someone that, I don't know, has another laptop that can help me present. Actually, this happened to someone in a conference where they were like, yeah, this, like, I really can't do this. Can you quickly open your laptop and I can share my slides and use it? It's okay.
We had a situation, the projector bulb was gone, so you couldn't project anything. The speaker had to just.
I think it depends on the talk. I think it's okay, and it's okay to even say, yeah, I really need the slides. So for a talk like this, not having slides is okay. But for example, I talk a lot about architecture, so I show a lot of like diagrams and classes and stuff, and that's not something that I could really. That's not a point that I can make without the visual support. I mean, I do the slides for a reason because they're really important. So that would be the time where I say, okay, let's try again the next event. Yeah, it just happens. And I think people are understanding enough. More questions? Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, now that you've been told that you do have something to say, we want to invite you to put it into practice. So for our next meetup, which will be on the 12th of December, a festive meetup, we'd like to invite folks to come and have a go. So we thought, let's not give you a 45-minute slot to fill. It might be slightly intimidating. Let's start with lightning talks. So for anyone who's not familiar with a lightning talk, it's just a really quick presentation, lasts no longer than 5 minutes. In this case, it'll be on something that you're interested to talk about. The purpose of this is to do exactly what Florina said. Let's get some practice and let's get some feedback as well. So you might not even want to present, but it'd be great if you can join us in the audience if you feel that you want to support others and you feel you can be constructive in what you want to say back to them. So with our lightning talks, it's going to be 5 minutes maximum. It's a time box, not a target. We'll have to honour our code of conduct, and we want you to have fun with it. To be able to sign up for it, we'll publish it with our next meetup, which we should be publishing in the morning, and we'll have 10 slots. We feel that's probably enough. That's quite exhausting, both as speakers and listeners. I don't know if I could be number 10 and wait that long to speak. Got to go on first. We'd like to encourage as many of you as possible to sign up also. And what we'll do, if you click the button, ta-da, that's really slow. I don't know why it's done that. We will use a random name. Yay. Philly, you talk next. We'll use a random name picker to pick who's going to talk, and we will let you know. Oh, there we go. Exciting. We will let you know who's been selected so you've got plenty of time to get yourself ready and prepare.
Yeah. So if you would like to help support this community, there's lots of ways that you can do that. Please promote us on social media. Do you want to speak? So speak at the next session, but also if you have a longer talk that you want to try and put in, please get in touch with us. As Florina said, she can help out. We can help out as well, helping you develop anything you want to look at. Invite your friends, show up, and we're always looking for space. So if you have an employer that often will host meetups, to provide some food, that would be amazing. We're all hungry. Or facilitate a session. So it doesn't just have to be a talk. It could be a workshop. You want to try out a game. We're up for anything. So just get in touch with us. This slide in particular is for what we like to refer to as the mothership. So this is the overall Women in Agile organization. So these are ways that you can get engaged. They do have a Slack group that you can join. If you go and become a member, you'll get an option to join the Slack group. So that's everybody across the world who's part of Women in Agile. And you can start a local group. So we have one here in London, but if you're not actually from London, you live somewhere else, you start up somewhere else. And they also have a new voices program as part, so you can speak or you can be mentored by others. So the next Women in Agile conference will be in August 2020. It always happens along with the big Agile conference, which will be Agile 2020 next year. And the Sunday before the main conference is always the Women in Agile conference. And it's awesome. And these are all the ways you can connect. Thank you.
We did it.
Was that it?